There's something most people never think about. Every culture across the world, no matter how different, kept the same kinds of plants growing near their homes. Not for decoration, not for cooking, but because when someone in the family got sick, those plants were the first thing they reached for. This isn't about going back in time or rejecting modern medicine. It's about understanding which herbs families passed down from generation to generation, why they were trusted, and why many of them are still worth knowing today. Some of these herbs you'll recognize immediately. Others you may have never heard of at all. But every single one of them has earned its place through repeated use, not through marketing or trends. Let's start with one that has been found in nearly every healing tradition across the world, from Europe to Asia to the Americas. Plant number 1, chamomile. Chamomile is one of those herbs that most people have seen in a tea box at the grocery store. But very few people understand how deeply it was relied on long before tea bags existed. For generations, chamomile was used by families to support the body during restlessness, stomach discomfort, and the kind of sickness that made sleep impossible. It was one of the first herbs mothers reached for when children were unwell because it worked gently, without overwhelming a vulnerable body. What made chamomile so trusted was its consistency. It didn't produce dramatic effects. It produced reliable ones. And in a household without access to a doctor or pharmacy, reliability was everything. Traditionally, chamomile was associated with calming the digestive system, reducing tension in the body, and supporting sleep during illness. It was used when the body was too agitated to rest, and rest was exactly what it needed most. Chamomile still matters today because the situations it was used for haven't disappeared. Digestive discomfort, restlessness, and poor sleep during illness are still among the most common complaints people deal with. Chamomile grows well from seed and prefers full sun with moderately moist, well-draining soil. It grows quickly, produces small daisy-like flowers, and can be harvested repeatedly throughout the growing season. It adapts well to containers, raised beds, or open garden spaces, making it one of the most flexible medicinal herbs a family can grow. Once established, chamomile requires very little care. It self-seeds in many climates, meaning it can return year after year without being replanted. That kind of low-effort consistency made it a staple in family herb gardens for centuries, and it still earns that place today. Plant number 2, lavender. Most people today associate lavender with candles, soaps, and relaxation products. But long before it became a commercial fragrance, lavender was a medicinal herb families depended on during illness. For generations, lavender was used to support the body during anxiety, tension headaches, and the kind of restlessness that illness brings when the mind won't slow down. Its presence alone was considered supportive in many traditional households. Traditionally, lavender was associated with calming the nervous system, easing discomfort related to tension, and supporting the kind of deep rest the body needs to recover properly. Lavender grows best in full sun and prefers dry, well-draining soil. It does not tolerate soggy conditions and actually thrives in lean soil that other plants struggle in. This makes it one of the easiest herbs to maintain because it requires very little watering or fertilizing once established. Lavender can be grown from seed, though it germinates slowly. Many people start with young plants to speed up the process. Once mature, lavender is drought-tolerant, long-lasting, and can be harvested repeatedly throughout the season. It grows well in containers or garden beds and remains productive for many years with minimal attention. Plant number 3, plantain. Not the banana-like fruit, the leafy herb that grows in almost every lawn and sidewalk crack in the world. Plantain is one of the most overlooked medicinal herbs in existence, not because it's rare, but because it's so common that people stopped seeing it entirely. For generations, families used plantain as one of their most immediate first response herbs. When a child scraped a knee, when an insect stung someone, when a small wound wouldn't stop irritating, plantain was often the first thing someone reached for because it was almost always within arm's reach. What made plantain so valuable was that it required no preparation. A leaf could be chewed or bruised slightly and applied directly. That immediacy made it one of the most practically useful herbs in traditional family care, especially outdoors or in situations where no other remedy was available. Traditionally, plantain was associated with soothing skin irritation, drawing out discomfort from stings and minor infections, and supporting the body's natural healing response to surface wounds. Plantain grows naturally almost everywhere and requires no cultivation. It thrives in compacted soil, poor conditions, and neglected spaces where other herbs would struggle. If you want to encourage it in your garden, simply allow it to grow where it already appears. It asks for nothing. Allowing plantain to grow intentionally challenges the common idea that valuable medicinal plants must be carefully tended and cultivated. Sometimes the most powerful herbs are the ones already growing beneath your feet. Plant number 4. Lemon verbena. Lemon verbena is an herb that many people have never heard of, yet in the cultures where it was traditionally grown, it was considered indispensable during illness. For generations, lemon verbena was used to support the body during digestive upset, fever-related discomfort, and the kind of nervous exhaustion that comes after prolonged illness. It was valued because it addressed more than one thing at a time, which made it especially practical in households where simplicity was necessary. What made lemon verbena stand out historically was its strength of flavor and aroma at very small amounts. A small amount of the herb went a long way, making a single plant capable of supporting a family through multiple illnesses across a season. Traditionally, lemon verbena was associated with supporting digestion, reducing mild fever-related tension, and calming the body during the recovery phase of illness when people felt weak but restless at the same time. Lemon verbena is a warm-weather herb that grows vigorously in full sun with well-draining soil. In warmer U.S. climates, it can grow as a perennial shrub. In cooler climates, it grows well in containers that can be brought indoors before the first frost. It responds very well to regular harvesting, which keeps it compact and encourages fresh, flavorful growth. Lemon verbena is one of those herbs that rewards attention. The more it is tended to, the more it produces. Plant number 5. Oregano. Oregano is another herb most people only see as a kitchen spice, but its history as a medicinal herb goes far deeper than cooking, and in many traditional cultures, its medicinal use came first. For generations, oregano was used by families to support the body during respiratory illness, congestion, and infections that lingered longer than expected. It was trusted because it was potent. Families understood that oregano was not a gentle herb. It was a strong one, used when illness needed a stronger response. What made oregano especially valuable in traditional households was that it was already present in the kitchen. This meant it was always accessible during illness, without needing to seek out something unfamiliar or distant. Traditionally, oregano was associated with supporting the body during respiratory discomfort, fighting back against persistent illness, and providing warmth to a body weakened by prolonged sickness. Oregano grows best in full sun and prefers dry, well-draining soil. Like lavender, it actually performs better in less fertile conditions. It is drought-tolerant once established and can be grown outdoors in most U.S. climates or in containers for those with limited space. Oregano spreads gradually and can be harvested frequently. Regular trimming encourages denser growth and maintains the plant's medicinal potency. A single oregano plant, properly maintained, can supply a household with both culinary and medicinal use for many years. Plant number 6. Valerian. Valerian is an herb that has been trusted for a very long time in cultures where sleep and nervous system support were understood as essential parts of healing. For generations, valerian was used by families during illness that disrupted sleep, brought anxiety, or left people in a state of physical tension that made rest impossible. It was relied on not as a daily herb, but as a targeted one, used specifically when the body needed to fully stop and recover. What made valerian distinctive was how serious its reputation was. It wasn't used casually. Families understood it as a powerful herb and used it with intention. That intentional use is part of why it developed such a consistent and enduring reputation across cultures that had no connection to one another. Traditionally, valerian was associated with supporting deep sleep, calming the nervous system during prolonged illness, and helping the body transition from the agitated state of active sickness into the quiet state needed for true recovery. Valerian is a tall, flowering perennial that grows best in full sun to partial shade with moist, fertile soil. It's usually grown from young plants or divisions rather than seed. Once established, it is hardy and requires little attention beyond occasional watering and space to grow. Valerian's roots are the most traditionally valued part of the plant. They develop slowly, usually over more than one growing season, which means patience is required. But that same slow development produces a root with a long history of meaningful use, and that kind of depth is worth waiting for. Plant number 7, rosemary. Rosemary is an herb so familiar that its medicinal history often gets completely overlooked. But in the households where it was grown for centuries, rosemary was not just a cooking herb. It was a plant families trusted during illness that affected the mind, the circulation, and overall strength. For generations, rosemary was used to support mental clarity during illness, improve circulation in a body weakened by prolonged sickness, and restore energy during recovery. It was one of the herbs that people turned to not at the height of illness, but afterward, when the body was healing but still needed support to regain its full strength. What made rosemary especially valuable in traditional households was its durability. It could be dried and stored, meaning it was available in winter, when fresh herbs were scarce and illness was most likely to strike. Traditionally, rosemary was associated with supporting memory and mental clarity, improving blood flow, and strengthening the body during recovery from prolonged weakness. Rosemary grows best in full sun and prefers dry, well-draining soil. It is one of the most drought-tolerant medicinal herbs available, making it forgiving for gardeners who occasionally forget to water. It grows well in containers, raised beds, or directly in the ground in warmer climates. Once established, rosemary grows slowly, but lives for many years. A mature rosemary plant becomes a long-term companion in the garden, one that produces reliably across seasons without demanding constant care. Plant number 8, marshmallow root. Marshmallow root has very little to do with the sweet treat most people are familiar with, but its name does come from the plant, and the reason it was so valued explains exactly what made it important. For generations, marshmallow root was used by families to soothe irritated tissues anywhere in the body. When illness brought a raw, painful throat, when digestion felt inflamed, or when a persistent cough left the chest feeling raw, marshmallow root was one of the herbs families reached for because it coated and calmed the areas that hurt most. What made marshmallow root stand out historically was that it was suited to the kind of illness that wore people down slowly rather than hitting fast. Its soothing properties made prolonged sickness more tolerable and allowed the body to focus on recovery rather than constant discomfort. Traditionally, marshmallow root was associated with soothing the throat and digestive tract, calming irritation related to respiratory illness, and supporting the body's mucous membranes during infection. Marshmallow is a tall, attractive perennial that grows well in full sun to partial shade with moderately moist, well-draining soil. It is grown from seed or root divisions and can take a couple of seasons to establish fully. Once mature, it is hardy and self-sustaining. The roots are harvested in autumn when the plant's energy has returned underground. This slower harvest cycle means marshmallow root rewards long-term gardeners rather than those looking for quick results. But what it offers once established is a plant that can serve a household for many years. Plant number 9, yarrow. Yarrow is an herb that has appeared in traditional medicine across nearly every continent where it grows. That kind of universal presence is not a coincidence. It reflects how consistently families across different cultures found the same value in the same plant. For generations, yarrow was used to support the body during fever, bleeding, and infections that came from wounds or cuts. It was often one of the first herbs used when the body was injured, rather than simply ill, which gave it a different role than most medicinal herbs. What made yarrow especially trusted was its speed. Families used it in situations where waiting was not an option, and it responded quickly enough to earn a reputation that crossed cultural boundaries. That cross-cultural trust is one of the strongest signals of a plant's genuine traditional value. Traditionally, yarrow was associated with slowing minor bleeding, supporting the body's response to fever, and helping wounds begin the healing process without complication. Yarrow grows easily from seed and prefers full sun with well-draining, even dry soil. It is highly drought-tolerant and spreads gradually, making it a self-sustaining addition to any garden. Once established, yarrow requires almost no maintenance and returns reliably every year. Because yarrow is both medicinal and visually striking in the garden, it serves a double purpose. It attracts beneficial insects, supports the surrounding garden ecosystem, and provides a reliable medicinal resource year after year without any additional input. Plant number 10, hyssop. Hyssop is an herb that appears in some of the oldest written records of medicinal plant use in history. Despite that ancient track record, very few modern gardeners grow it, and even fewer know what it was traditionally used for. For generations, hyssop was used by families to support the body during respiratory illness, chest congestion, and persistent coughs that lingered well after other symptoms had passed. It was especially relied on during the kind of illness that settled in the lungs and refused to move quickly. What made hyssop distinctive was its role in making prolonged illness more manageable. It wasn't used to eliminate sickness in a single application, but to support the body consistently while recovery slowly progressed. That steady, patient support is how hyssop built its long reputation. Traditionally, hyssop was associated with clearing congestion, supporting the lungs during respiratory illness, and helping the body clear what it needed to clear in order to breathe more comfortably. Hyssop grows best in full sun and prefers dry, well-draining soil. It is drought-tolerant, compact, and easy to manage in either containers or garden beds. It can be grown from seed or young plants and becomes a reliable perennial in most climates. Regular trimming keeps hyssop productive and encourages fresh growth throughout the season. It is one of those herbs that rewards consistent harvesting and becomes more vigorous over time rather than less. Plant number 11. Nettle. Nettle is an herb most people know only as something that stings when touched. But beneath that defensive exterior is one of the most nutritionally and medicinally valued plants that traditional families ever relied on. For generations, nettle was used as a recovery herb. When illness had passed, but left the body weak, depleted, and slow to regain strength, nettle was one of the first plants families turned to because of how much it offered to a body that needed rebuilding. What made nettle especially important in traditional households was that it was available in early spring, exactly when winter illnesses were passing and the body was in greatest need of restoration. That seasonal timing made it one of the most practically timed herbs a family could rely on. Traditionally, nettle was associated with supporting iron levels, reducing inflammation, strengthening the body during recovery from illness, and providing dense nutritional support when the diet alone wasn't enough. Nettle grows in moist, rich soil and prefers partial shade to full sun. It spreads aggressively and is best grown in containers or a dedicated garden space where its growth can be managed. Gardeners who grow it in open beds should expect it to spread. Gloves are necessary when harvesting nettle, but cooking or drying the plant completely removes the sting. Once processed, nettle becomes one of the most nutrient-dense medicinal herbs available, which is why families who understood it considered it far too valuable to ignore. Plant number 12, milk thistle. Milk thistle is an herb that has been trusted for centuries, specifically in relation to recovery. Not recovery from a cold or a minor illness, but the deeper recovery that the liver and digestive system need after prolonged sickness, medication use, or exposure to things the body struggled to process. For generations, milk thistle was used by families who understood that illness doesn't just affect the surface of the body. It affects the organs doing the quiet work of keeping everything functioning. The liver in particular was understood, even long ago, as something that needed support during and after illness. What made milk thistle stand out was the specificity of its use. It was not a broad-purpose herb. It was a focused one, used with understanding and intention. That kind of targeted traditional knowledge is part of what gives milk thistle its enduring reputation. Traditionally, milk thistle was associated with supporting liver function during recovery, protecting the liver during periods of prolonged illness, and helping the body process and clear what it had accumulated during sickness. Milk thistle is a resilient, easy-to-grow plant that prefers full sun and well-draining soil. It tolerates poor soil conditions and dry weather, making it one of the least demanding medicinal herbs to maintain. It grows from seed, produces striking purple flowers, and self-seeds readily. Milk thistle is a resilient, easy-to-grow plant that prefers full sun and well-draining soil. It tolerates poor soil conditions and dry weather, making it one of the least demanding medicinal herbs to maintain. It grows from seed, produces striking purple flowers, and self-seeds readily. Because milk thistle self-seeds and returns year after year with minimal effort, it becomes a permanent fixture in a medicinal garden without requiring ongoing investment. It is one of those plants that, once established, simply continues to provide. Plant number 13, catnip. Catnip is one of the most misunderstood medicinal herbs because of its well-known effect on cats. That association has largely erased its history as a plant families used intentionally and thoughtfully during illness. For generations, catnip was used to support children during fever, restlessness, and the kind of uncomfortable illness that left young bodies unable to settle. It was trusted specifically because of its gentleness. It produced calm without producing sedation, which made it ideal for those who needed relief without being overwhelmed. What made catnip important historically was that it was considered safe for those most vulnerable. In a household where illness was affecting children, having an herb gentle enough for young bodies was considered essential. That safety record across generations is a meaningful part of catnip's traditional value. Traditionally, catnip was associated with calming fever-related restlessness, soothing digestive discomfort in children, and supporting gentle sleep during illness without harsh effects. Catnip grows vigorously from seed and prefers full sun to partial shade with moderately moist, well-draining soil. It spreads readily and grows quickly, making it one of the most productive medicinal herbs for the amount of space and effort it requires. If cats are present in or near the garden, protective measures may be necessary to prevent them from disturbing the plant before it matures. Once established and harvested, catnip is best dried before use, which also reduces its effect on cats significantly. Plant number 14, motherwort. Motherwort is an herb that many gardeners have never encountered. Yet in the traditions where it was used, it held a very specific and deeply trusted role in family health. For generations, motherwort was used to support the heart during times of emotional stress, prolonged anxiety, and the kind of physical strain that illness places on the whole body. It was understood in many cultures that when the body was sick for a long time, the heart, both physically and emotionally, needed its own form of support. What made motherwort distinctive was that it was used when illness went beyond physical symptoms. When sickness brought fear, prolonged grief, or the kind of tension that settles in the chest, motherwort was the herb families used to address that layer of illness that most other plants didn't reach. Traditionally, motherwort was associated with calming a racing or tense heart during stress, supporting emotional steadiness during prolonged illness, and easing the physical sensation of anxiety that illness often brings. Motherwort grows easily from seed and prefers partial shade to full sun with well-draining soil. It grows tall, spreads gradually, and returns each year as a reliable perennial. Once established, it requires very little maintenance and can be harvested throughout the growing season. Because motherwort works at a level that most medicinal herbs don't address directly, it fills a gap in traditional family plant care that is still just as relevant today as it was generations ago. Plant number 15, calendula. Calendula is often called one of the most generous medicinal plants a gardener can grow, not because of dramatic effects, but because of how consistently and quietly it contributes to family health in ways that are easy to overlook until they're needed. For generations, calendula was used to support the body during skin irritation, slow-healing wounds, and inflammation that lingered after illness. It was kept close to the home not for emergencies, but for the steady, ordinary moments of discomfort that every family faces across a lifetime. What made calendula especially valued in traditional households was that it required almost nothing from the gardener while giving a great deal in return. It bloomed continuously, could be harvested regularly, and produced medicine across an entire season from a single planting. Traditionally, calendula was associated with soothing inflamed or irritated skin, supporting wound healing, reducing local inflammation, and providing a gentle but consistent medicinal presence throughout the year. Calendula grows easily from seed and prefers full sun with moderately well-draining soil. It grows quickly, begins blooming early in the season, and continues producing flowers until frost. It is one of the few medicinal plants that can be started from seed by a complete beginner and still succeed reliably. The flowers are the most medicinally valued part of the plant and can be harvested frequently once blooming begins. Regular harvesting actually extends the blooming season, meaning the more you use the plant, the more it gives you. That relationship, one of mutual benefit and steady generosity, is what made calendula a permanent part of family medicine gardens for generations. These 15 herbs were not chosen randomly. They were kept alive through generations of families making deliberate decisions about which plants were worth growing, teaching, and passing down. That process of passing knowledge forward is itself something worth thinking about. Every family that grew these herbs was making a quiet investment in the people who would come after them. They were saying, when you don't know what to do, start here. Start with what we learned. Growing medicinal herbs today is not about replacing modern medicine or pretending nothing has changed. It is about maintaining a relationship with plants that have earned their place through something more durable than trends. They earned it through use, through time, and through the trust of ordinary people doing their best to take care of the people they loved. If this video helped you see any of these herbs differently, take a moment to like it. It helps this channel reach more people who are looking for grounded, practical plant knowledge rooted in something real. And if you want more content like this, subscribe to Daily Plant Life. This channel focuses on plants that are useful, realistic to grow, and connected to the kind of knowledge that has always mattered most. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.